Here are two people, both starting from $0 at the same age, both pulling in average incomes, and one of them retires in 5 years, while the other works until 65. The only thing separating those two outcomes is one decision about how to think about money, and that is exactly what this video breaks down. What follows is the specific plan I would run if I were starting from nothing in 2026 and wanted to be financially free in 5 years. Not a fantasy version, not a highlight reel, but the actual math and the actual strategy, including the parts that get uncomfortable. Retirement has nothing to do with your age, and it never did. That idea came from a pension system built for a completely different era, and most people inherited it without questioning it. What retirement actually comes down to is your savings rate, and the difference between a low savings rate and a high one is almost impossible to overstate. The average American right now saves somewhere between 3.5% and 4.5% of their income, and at that pace, the math gives you roughly 43 years before you can stop working. That is the default path. That is what happens when you just go along with it. Change the savings rate, and the timeline collapses. Saving 50% of your income cuts that timeline to 17 years. Pushing it to 70% gets you to about 8.5 years. And at 82%, the numbers point to roughly 5.5 years. Before you're done, get the rate to 90%, and you're looking at 3 years, which sounds absurd until you run the actual calculation. This framework didn't start on Wall Street. A software engineer named Pete Adeny, better known as Mr. Money Mustache, retired at 30 in 2005 after 9 years of working, and started writing about the math behind his decision in 2011. The community that formed around his ideas now fills a subreddit with over 2 million members, and the movement has a name, FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. What separates FIRE thinking from standard financial advice is the focus on savings rate as the primary engine. Not investment returns, not stock picks, and not income alone. Before any of the strategy makes sense, you need one specific number, and it comes from research published in 1998 by 3 professors at Trinity University. Their analysis of decades of market data produced what is now called the 4% rule, which holds that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year without depleting it over a 30-year period. Flipped around, that rule gives you your FIRE number, the total portfolio size you need to retire. Spend $40,000 a year and you need $1 million. Get annual expenses down to $25,000 and the target drops to $625,000, which is a fundamentally different challenge to solve in 5 years. For early retirees drawing on a portfolio for 40 or 50 years rather than 30. Some researchers have suggested targeting a more careful withdrawal rate, closer to 3.25% or 3.5%. And Morningstar weighed in on exactly that debate in 2023 and 2024. 4% remains the widely accepted starting point, and that is what we'll use here. None of this works at a median income on frugality alone, and any plan that tells you otherwise is leaving out the hard part. The 5-year timeline requires pulling 2 levers simultaneously, bringing income up and pushing expenses down, hard at the same time. Grant Sabatier's bank account held $2.26 in 2010, when he was 24 years old, and 5 years later, he'd accumulated $1.25 million in net worth. His book, Financial Freedom, published in 2019 by Penguin Random House, makes the case in terms that stick. Every dollar you invest works for you, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The speed at which you accumulate investable dollars directly determines how long those dollars have to compound before you need them. The income skills with the highest returns in 2025 and into 2026, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data, include software development at a median above $130,000 annually, cloud and cybersecurity work ranging from $110,000 to over $160,000, along with digital marketing, data analytics, and UX design. Skilled trades aren't far behind in high cost of living markets, with electricians and plumbers regularly hitting $70,000 to over $100,000. A side hustle running alongside a primary job adds another layer. A Bankrate survey from 2024 found roughly 36% of American adults running some kind of side income, with the median coming in around $810 per month, which adds up to close to $10,000 annually, and compounded into index funds over 5 years. At the S&P 500's historical average of around 10.5% nominal annual return, that $10,000 per year starts to build into something real. Remote work opened a door that didn't exist a decade ago, and geographic arbitrage is now one of the most practical moves available. Earning a salary priced for San Francisco or New York, while living somewhere that costs 40 or 50% less, doesn't require a raise or a promotion, and the effect on the investable gap each month can be bigger than almost any other single move on this list. Bureau of Labor Statistics consumer data puts housing at about 33% of the average American's after-tax spending, with transportation at 16% and food at 13%, meaning those three categories alone account for roughly 60% of what most people spend. Attack all three and you can rebuild your financial picture within months. House hacking is the most direct way to take housing from your biggest expense to near zero, and the mechanics are straightforward. You buy a duplex or small multi-unit property, live in one unit, rent out the other, and the rental income covers most or all of the mortgage. A rented unit in a mid-tier American city generates somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 per month, and an FHA loan brings the entry cost down to as little as 3.5% down. So, on a $250,000 property, that is $8,750 out of pocket. Mortgage rates are higher now than they were in 2020 and 21, when 30-year fixed rates were sitting below 3%, and rates touched 7.5% to 8% in late 2023. Those numbers demand careful analysis before committing to any specific market, and the math doesn't work everywhere. But in the right city, in the right property, the strategy still functions, and eliminating your single largest expense is worth the effort of finding where the numbers close. Transportation adds another layer of recovery when handled correctly. A paid-off reliable used car compared to a financed new vehicle can free up $500 to $1,000 per month, and combined with a housing strategy that removes the mortgage burden, that is potentially $2,000 or more per month, flowing directly into investments, which works out to $24,000 a year, redirected from spending to compound growth. Not all investment accounts work the same way, and running them in the wrong sequence costs real money in unnecessary taxes over a 5-year sprint. The Bogleheads community, built around the investment philosophy of the late Vanguard founder John Bogle, established a contribution order that the FIRE community has largely adopted as standard. Employer 401k contributions come first, but only up to whatever the company matches, because that match represents a 100% instant return, and nothing else in investing comes close. From there, the HSA gets attention, with a 2025 individual contribution limit of $4,300. The triple tax benefit of the HSA, where contributions go in pre-tax, growth accumulates tax-free, and qualified medical withdrawals come out tax-free, makes it one of the most efficient accounts available and one of the least used. The Roth IRA comes next, capped at $7,000 in 2025. And for someone building toward early retirement, it carries a specific advantage tied to a strategy called the Roth conversion ladder. This approach allows access to traditional 401k money before age 59.5 without the standard 10% early withdrawal penalty. But it requires 5 years of advanced planning, which means starting immediately. After the Roth IRA is maxed, contributions go back into the 401k up to its full 2025 limit of $23,500. $23,500 plus $7,000 plus $4,300 adds up to approximately $34,800 per year. That can move into investments before a single dollar needs to go into a taxable brokerage account. Everything beyond that cap flows into low-cost index funds. Tracking the S&P 500 or total market, kept simple and kept cheap. Two scenarios illustrate how the numbers play out, and both are worth walking through because they cover different income levels with different outcomes. Scenario 1 starts with a gross income of $150,000 per year. After a combined tax rate of roughly 28%, take-home lands at about $108,000, and with house hacking and disciplined lifestyle choices, holding annual expenses to $24,000. The investable gap sits at $84,000 per year. Run that at a 7% average real return over 5 years, and the portfolio lands at approximately $580,000 to $600,000. At 4% withdrawal, that supports roughly $23,000 to $24,000 annually, which matches the exact spending level maintained during the accumulation phase, and the math closes cleanly. Scenario 2 runs on a more common income setup. $60,000 from a primary job plus $20,000 from side income gives $80,000 gross, and after a 22% effective tax rate, take-home comes to about $62,400. Expenses, held at $20,000 per year, free up $42,400 for investments. 5 years at 7% real return produces roughly $290,000 to $300,000, and 4% of that supports about $11,700 to $12,000 per year. That doesn't fund full retirement on its own, but it gets to what the community calls barista fire, where the portfolio covers most of the bills, and part-time work in something low stress covers the rest. For many people, that arrangement looks and feels like retirement, and in lower cost of living areas, $12,000 in portfolio income, alongside $15,000 to $20,000 from part-time work, is genuinely comfortable living. Healthcare is the sharpest practical challenge facing American early retirees under 65 who haven't yet reached Medicare eligibility. Without employer coverage, marketplace insurance through the AKA can run $400 to $800 or more per month for a single person, depending on age, state, and income level. And that cost belongs in the FIRE number from day one of planning. Some early retirees manage this through what is known as ASEAA income planning, structuring annual income to stay within subsidy-eligible ranges. But it requires ongoing attention and careful work year over year. The second challenge doesn't show up in a spreadsheet. Multiple case studies and community surveys from within the FIRE world document a consistent pattern where early retirees struggle in the first 1 to 2 years, not because the money runs out, but because the structure, the social connection, and the sense of identity that work provided disappear overnight. Nobody talks about this in the highlight reel version of financial independence, and ignoring it doesn't make it go away. The question of what you're retiring to matters as much as when the math says you're free. Sequence of returns risk is the third variable that deserves more attention than it gets. When the market drops hard in the first few years of retirement, the damage to a portfolio can be permanent, even if long-term average returns look healthy in hindsight. The 4% rule carries a historical success rate of around 95% over 30 years, which sounds high until you recognize that 5% failure means roughly 1 in 20 scenarios where the money runs out. Early retirees drawing on portfolios for 40 or 50 years carry more exposure to this risk than the 30-year model assumes, and building a buffer into the plan, rather than running right at the theoretical edge, is worth considering. Here is where everything lands. Retiring in 5 years from zero is real math for the right person running the right plan, and the requirements are specific. A savings rate between 80 and 90% of take-home pay, income growth that creates a large enough gap to work with, a FIRE number calculated honestly from actual spending, every tax-advantaged account maxed in the right order, a housing strategy that removes the largest expense from the equation, and clear-eyed planning around healthcare and sequence of returns risk. 3.5% is the national savings rate. 80% or more is what the 5-year plan needs. The entire distance between working until 65 and walking away in 5 years lives inside that gap. And none of what separates those two outcomes is secret or out of reach. Remote work, low-cost index fund investing, and the tools available in 2026 make this path more reachable than it has ever been before. The math is clear. Running it without shortcuts is the only hard part. And now you know exactly where to start.